So let's talk a little today about performing to form. For those of you following along in your Pine and Gilmore book, this is Chapter 7 in Pine and Gilmore. I want to start with a story about Taggart Frost. This is a story of when I was an MBA student many years ago at the University of Northern Iowa. I had decided to take an elective course called Organizational Development. And organizational development is really all about managing change in organizations and getting people to accept change, embrace change, and help to make change occur successfully. So we came in the first day of class, and Taggart Frost said, "This is an elective, so this is your class. You can set this class up any way that you would like. So let's spend the first night designing a syllabus for the course." So we went through this long process of writing down goals and objectives and what each of us wanted to get out of the class, and spending time talking about different topics that we thought should be covered and how they ought to be covered and how we ought to be evaluated in terms of grading. And we spent probably 90 minutes putting this thing together, and there was a lot of give and take between Taggart and the students, and but it was mostly the students coming up with the ideas and Taggart managing them and putting them up on the blackboard and erasing things and adding new things and erasing things and adding new things. And after about 90 minutes, we had stuff written on the board, and Taggart's question to us was, "Okay, so now is this what we all agreed to in terms of how we want the course to operate? Is this the syllabus that we want to use?" And we all said yes. Then Taggart handed out the syllabus for the class, and it was virtually the same things as were written on the board. Now, some of the stuff that was written on the board was sort of boilerplate stuff that we would expect in any MBA class, those sorts of things. But what had happened was Taggart had spent 90 minutes performing and putting on a presentation and creating an experience where we thought that we were driving the process, but at the end of the day, he had guided us to the exact spot that he had thought the course should be. So this was actually an interesting experience for many of us, because what we had realized was that we had been softly manipulated into agreeing that this is what the course should look like. And of course, Taggart was putting on a performance. So the idea here in terms of thinking about your job and work as a performance is, you need to turn interaction, transaction, events, etc. into experiences and make things memorable. That was a very memorable night in my MBA class, one of the most memorable things in my whole MBA program, as a matter of fact. And it really was all about different types of performances. So your book in Chapter 7 talks about different types of performances, and it talks about scripts being either stable or dynamic, and performances being either stable or dynamic. Now, a dynamic performance is one that's always changing. That is, performance is different every single time. Sort of like a random interaction with someone. Many times faculty members will teach the same class 2 or 3 times in a row, maybe in the same day. And for some faculty members, the performance is exactly the same every time. That's called a stable performance. It's not maybe exactly the same word for word or whatever, but it's almost the same, as opposed to a dynamic performance, which is always changing and always a little bit different. The same can be said for scripts. Now, the script is exactly what is said at that performance. And so sometimes the script is stable. That is, the script is virtually the same verbatim from one time to the next. The second approach is one where the script is dynamic and always changing. It's different every single time it is said. And you might notice this, an example of this is when the President of the United States gives a speech, and the term right now is stays on the teleprompter. That is, reads the speech the way it was written, as opposed to when the president goes off script or off the teleprompter, where it becomes much more of a free-flowing conversation that might turn in any direction given any response from any particular person. That would be dynamic. So if we have two types of performances and two types of scripts, we obviously have four different types of performances. The first one is called platform theater, and of course this is where we have a stable performance and a stable script. This is sort of like when you go to watch a performance of a musical play at the Smith Center. What happens in the order of events and things that happen are exactly the same every single time, and the script is the same every time. So whether you see the Lion King on a Monday or you see the Lion King on Thursday, it is in reality as close to the same performance as possible. In terms of taking a class at a school, this might be the typical PowerPoint lecture where the faculty member has notes, and many of you have sat in classes where the faculty member virtually reads you the chapters in the textbook. This sort of an approach is called platform theater. This is good in situations, obviously, where you want every single person to have exactly the same kind of experience and obtain the same information. The second approach is called matching theater. This is where the performance is stable, but the script is dynamic. Now, so this is a situation where we know in a classroom we know what's going to be covered. We just don't know exactly how it's going to be covered. So lots of times, if you have a seminar class where the class has a set of readings and the faculty member comes in and starts a topic, and then there's a long discussion about the topic. This is what we ordinarily would refer to as a matching theater type of performance. When I teach my classes, they tend to be matching theater kinds of performances. That is, I know what we're going to cover that particular day in class. I just don't know exactly the words that are going to be used to do that. It might, every time the examples change, and every single time the way that we approach a subject might change a little bit, but we're still going to cover the same subjects. The next sort of a theater is called street theater, and we call it street theater because if you're in some place, we were just recently in New Orleans, and in New Orleans, there are a lot of street performers, and they sort of, they have this thing where they interact with the crowd, and it looks like it's very improvisational, but in reality, it's a very stable script, but tied onto a dynamic performance, which of course is tied to the people in the audience, because the people in the audience are part of the performance. In any situation where you have people in the audience that are a major part of the performance, in many cases, it will be street theater, where the performance might not be the same, but the scripts and the bits and sorts of things are typically the same. In a classroom setting, this would probably be a situation where cases are being done. When we do case analysis, the whole point is that the students should drive the discussion, and that the faculty member is the guide or the Sherpa or the referee or the person who helps to create how this is all going to go together, but in reality doesn't have any control over where it ends up. And of course, the last one is the one that we're all familiar with from TV shows and those sorts of things, where they focus on improvisational theater. And of course, this is where the performance is dynamic and the script is dynamic. It could be a current event-based class. It could be a class that includes a field trip that we don't know exactly how it's going to work as we go through the field trip. So, platform theater, typically live theater, highly scripted, guided tours. There typically are no interruptions, no customer involvement, and the costumes are exactly the same every single time. This is the way that lots of people like to run their service recovery operation, or their tour of the place, or how they want each of their individual people to handle customers. Matching theater, this is the way that I approach teaching. I know what we're going to cover, I'm just not sure how we're going to cover. It is scripted with changes in every performance, and it depends on the customer interactions. If I get a day where students want to chat about some things, then we simply change exactly how we're going to cover the topic. It's it's a little bit more like dynamic platform theater. Now, street theater is very structured, but designed to look fluid and improvise. That's part of the experience. The audience interacts and participates in the performance, and as a result, the person putting on the performance has to adapt what the person has said and turn it into the situation that they want to make sure that they get to at the end. This is a little bit about what my buddy Taggart Frost did with us. We thought that we were driving the performance, but the reality of it was he was making sure the performance ended up exactly where he wanted to. Sometimes this is a series of bits or little parts of performance and little dog and pony shows that the person puts together, maybe not in the same order every time, but they put them together and they end up with the performance. And then, of course, improv is free-flowing, unstructured, on the fly, evolving, different every time. If you ever heard someone say, the reason I like my job so much is that it's different every single day. Well, from a services marketing perspective or from an experiential marketing perspective, they are, in fact, describing an improv theater platform. So it is the key is to understand and plan the performance ahead of time.